Hi, welcome to Box on the Box Rock and Celluloid, Botbrack for short. I'm Webber Box, and today I'm going to be picking my top 10 disaster films. So the disaster film cycle really had its heyday in the 1970s. But an early example prior to that is a film like Krakatoa East of Java, starring Maximilian Schell. I've seen this, I think, once, maybe twice when I was a kid. It's about the real-life volcano eruption on the island of Java, which I think is in Indonesia. It was okay. I suppose a modern example of that, a natural disaster that really happened, would be The Impossible. And I nearly put that in my top 10. But I decided to keep it cheesy. Impossible is actually a pretty serious film. It treats its subject matter seriously, as it should do, because it's about the Boxing Day tsunami. So that's a pretty good example there. Going back to the past, an early disaster film would be San Francisco from the 1930s, starring Spencer Tracy and Clark Gable, about the San Francisco earthquake. So there's just some different examples there, but the 1970s cycle started with Airport, and it was so popular, it had a sequel in 1975, 1977 and 1979. What's important about the 1979 one is not Airport 1979, it's Airport 1979, The Concorde. So don't forget that. The original Airport grossed $128 million back in 1970, so inflation adjusted for today, it's about $870 million. So it showed the kind of numbers that these films could do, and actually got Oscar nominations, won an Oscar for Helen Hayes, that film. After that you got a lot, and they kind of made a comeback in the 90s. What we like about disaster films, I think there's two simple factors. First and foremost, it's the destruction. We love all the destruction, the death, decay, and so on. And we love seeing a motley group of survivors or people trying to survive in the aftermath of disaster. So you'll have the initial disaster, and then they'll have lots of mini disasters they've got to kind of navigate to finally survive it. So you get people from different backgrounds. You can have an old person, old lady, old man, a gay person of different sexuality, young person, someone of kind of some different ethnicity, and so on, people with different professional backgrounds. These are people that wouldn't normally meet, but they're thrown into the melting pot of post-disaster, and they've got to come together. And I think what we like about that is it shows people working together who wouldn't normally, or whose paths wouldn't normally cross, so to speak. So that provides kind of comfort and satisfaction for the audience, because it's reassuring. And when we get people in the group or who challenge that, we're quite happy when they get kind of killed off, because they kind of deserve it, because they're not working as a team. And that's the other thing with these films. They often have spectacular, suspenseful deaths, and they also have a lot of self-sacrifice as well, which we'll also come to. So yeah, and typically these films don't attract the best directors. They attract sort of competent, what I call metteur-en-scènes in French New Wave speak. I suppose a film like War of the Worlds, Steven Spielberg, that has disaster film elements, but it is a sci-fi book. So I discounted that. One thing about the end of the 70s, you know, like all things, the disaster films really tailed off, and a couple of awful ones right at the end was Beyond the Poseidon Adventure in 1979. It's like, yeah, let's go back into the Poseidon and just kind of root around, with Michael Caine taking his paycheck. And When Time Ran Out is a terrible one with Paul Newman in it. One I nearly put in the top 10, but it's got disaster film elements, but it's got more elements as well of terrorism and police investigations. It's a film called Roller Coaster. Now, you've not seen Roller Coaster. It's from 1977. It's directed by James Goldstone, who I think did When Time Ran Out. It's got George Segal and a brilliant Timothy Bottoms was the bomber. It's got some good explosion, disaster sequences at the start, but really it's more about the police investigation to stop him. There's another one called 2 Minute Warning as well, about a sniper at a football stadium. It's got, I think Cassavetes is in it, I think certainly Charlton Heston is, that's quite good. Again, it's got elements of potential disaster film, as is Black Sunday, but it's just got, you know, the police elements kind of stop it being full disaster. Okay, so let's go into it. So my number 10 entry here is one film that kind of was in the immediate revival of the disaster film. A really big hit in 1996 was the film Twister, where they're chasing cyclones. On the back of these, it showed that kind of disaster-y type films could make money, and this was Pierce Brosnan's kind of first big solo film after GoldenEye, and it's Dantes Peak. This is quite good. It's basically the Jaws plot. he's warning the town about the volcano being magmatic or something like that. It explodes and him and Linda Hamilton have to survive. Got quite a cool main theme actually. I can't remember if it was written by, the main score was by someone else, but it's competently directed by Roger Donaldson. So, you know, Roger Donaldson, classic competent director, did an excellent job of The Bounty and No Way Out. So he's got two really good films there on his CV, but the rest of it's not that great. You know, it grossed $178 million back in the day. It's about just over $400 million now. So a reasonable hit for Brosnan, and gave him a sort of a secure sort of star footing in the post-Bond era. At the same time, they did the film Volcano, which came out the same year, which was directed by Mick Jackson, The Bodyguard. This is about a volcano erupting in Los Angeles. It was pretty stupid. Some people think this is better. I kind of preferred the Brosnan-ness and the kind of more straight-ahead fun of Dantes Peak. And it also includes an old lady self-sacrificing in true Shelley Witness fashion. Okay, so that's number 10. Number 9, this next film's rubbish. It's really stupid, but I really like it for those reasons. It's got bad special effects, but it's the film The Core. So this is directed by, is it John? Oh, I've forgotten his second name. He directed Entrapment anyway. He kind of had a jobbing Hollywood career, English director. Johnny Meal, there we go. This has got Hilary Swank, Aaron Eckhart, the excellent Stanley Tucci, and Delroy Lindo and Checky Caro. Good cast, this. Basically, the magnetic, you know, the Earth's axis gets skewed, and then the magnetic shit's gone wrong, and, you know, bridges are collapsing, and the birds start flying into skyscrapers or something like that. So anyway, they have to get in this vessel and burrow into the core of the Earth, and it's what's it made of? An obtainium. Delroy Lindo, scientist, I think it's him, has come up with this material called unobtainium. Don't quote me on this, it's a while since I've seen it. And basically, this can withstand the heat of the Earth's core. It's absolutely bonkers, and it's got one of the best self-sacrifices ever. If you've not seen it, on Total Hams, but the self-sacrifice that happens in this film, if it was reality, that if that person was a real person and had gone into the Earth's core, then there would be statues of that person everywhere, like in every city, in every town, everywhere, because it would have saved the world entire. Okay, it wasn't a very big hit, yeah. Next one I'm going for, this is serious. It's actually a TV film from 1982, I think, or it was 83, sorry. I remember seeing this on TV, and it really struck a chord with me. It's The Day After. So this was actually directed by Nicholas Meyer, who did The Wrath of Khan and Star Trek VI, amongst others, Undiscovered Country. This is literally the day after a nuclear attack, so it has the build-up. It's set in a small Kansas community, I think. What struck me about this is at the time the effects were really cool. When the nuclear blast happened, it did the thing where people get incinerated, but they get X-rayed effectively, and you leave sort of silhouettes on the wall. This happened at Hiroshima, and that was really chilling. And then of course the survivors have to try and survive, which, you know, basically they won't. So it's pretty depressing, but it's a good TV film. Again, I'm calling it a disaster film. Yeah, you know, it's kind of more than that, I suppose. If you're interested in nuclear-themed things, of course, there's Dr. Strangelove and Sidney Lumet's very underrated Failsafe. There's also Testament, which is a film that came out at the same time as this, got a few Oscar nominations. So yeah, The Day After. Number 7, this film came in the sort of, it was a kind of third in the cycle. We're not sure what the other two were yet. It'd been 1974, they did Earthquake. So the grosses were starting to come down now. This grossed just under $80 million back in the day, 1974. That'd be $469 million now, so they're still doing good. And I think this was released in centre round. So that's very important. That meant, you know, the seats shook or something like that. I think it was centre round. I remember it was Roller Coaster, or maybe they both were released in that. But anyway, we got Charlton Heston on full Chuck Heston angst mode. He's having an affair. He's married to Ava Gardner. He's got some young girl he's seeing. I forget the cast members in this. There's a really good death in this where they get trapped in the lift shaft. The lift breaks, the wire, as it were. The lift collapses, and then animated blood splats on the ceiling. Now, when I was a young kid, I was thinking, like, well, why didn't they just jump up before the thing hit? And someone mentioned this the other day. Oh, well, if you were in a lift, could you just jump up? And it's like, no. if a lift, you know, fell, many stories, you know, your organs, your body's still accelerating. So what happens is if you just jump up at the last minute, you'll just kind of splat about, you know, a millisecond later, and your organs will still go everywhere, and, you know, there'll still be real blood on the top of the lift and animated blood. So don't be in a lift accident like that. Okay, number 6. Now this is a little gem that appeared on streaming. It takes the subject seriously. I think it's well done. The effects are good for what is a medium to low budget film. I think it's a $40 million budget. It's by that classic actor-auteur pairing, not Scorsese and Dino. It's Gerard Butler and Rick Roman War, and it's Greenland. I think this was from 2020. There was a bit of lockdown special this. This is decent. He gets like a warning to his phone. There's some kind of, I forget what the catastrophe, I think they're going to get hit by a meteor shower or something. It's kind of like knowing, actually, if you've seen a Nicolas Cage film, that's an alien sci-fi thing, but that has like a flares from the sun. Basically people are selected randomly and they're given a location to go to, which is great, but it's in Greenland, which isn't good if you live in, you know, Wisconsin or whatever. I forget where he lives. But anyway, you know, so he kind of, the disaster's about to happen, he's navigating through the disaster and trying to get there, and obviously society's collapsing. That's another good thing about disaster films, you have societal collapse. I was just going to say, I forgot to mention the day after, you know, if you want to get really depressed, watch Fred's. That's the ultimate, like, don't set off nuclear bombs. Don't send nuclear bombs to countries. Just watch Fred's. Horrible. Okay, so Greenland, worth checking out if you've not seen it. It's by far one of Gerard Butler's best performances, by far one of his best films. It's a generally good film. I'll give it a solid 7 out of 10. This is decent. Okay, number 5 is by one of the modern masters, maybe the modern master of the disaster film. He's since tailed off, but this was in his imperial phase. It's called Roland Emmerich, and it's the Day After Tomorrow from 2004. This is good, you know, it's warning us about global warming. Basically, you know, everything gets really cold. There's a great sequence later on, there's a super freeze, which is really well done. Good effects, great, you know, tidal wave hitting New York. That's probably been done several times since. Gross 553 million back in the day, probably about 940 million now if you gross it. So this was a big film. Jake Gyllenhaal is good, and then Dennis Quaid plays his dad, and he sets off on foot to try and rescue him. So you've got Jake Gyllenhaal trying to survive in the city, Dennis Quaid trying to get to the city, and navigating those, you know, the elements. Emmerich, of course, did Independence Day. That has got top disaster film elements, but it's kind of more of a sci-fi film. Some of the destruction in Independence Day is probably the greatest destruction. For those of you who saw the trailer at the time, which was one I did, no one can forget the freaking laser beam onto the White House and blowing it up from the flying saucer. It was absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, I actually thought the film was a bit shit. A lot of people love it, but destruction was great, but it was cheesy. Anyway, Day After Tomorrow is cheesy, but it's kind of got a nice serious element. You need that. Number 4 is another film that plays its cards serious, and I think it benefits from that. It's actually quite moving. There's a couple of bits in the climax which I think are generally moving and work really well, and it's 1998's Deep Impact. So in actual fact, Armageddon was the other asteroid film this year. That did better. That grossed $554 million. That would be 1.24 billion now. So Armageddon was a huge hit, but I hated it. I hate Michael Bay's direction. I hated all the jokiness of it. I found that Bruce Willis, you know, his life flashing before his eyes before he sacrifices himself. I just never liked it. And the destruction was good, but Deep Impact, the destruction doesn't come to the end. So there's actually a film called When Worlds Collide, 1950s sci-fi, which is a lot of fun. They should remake that. But this is about the asteroid, but there's elements of that, you know, it's kind of who's going to survive, who's going to get in the lottery to get into the caves to try and survive. They come with an idea to blow up the asteroid. It's kind of ends up being a, you know, virtually suicide mission. It's good, it's well done. Directed by Mimi Leder, and she did a lot of episodes of ER. Unfortunately, her career didn't really do that great after this. She did The Peacemaker and Pay It Forward. But this is a good film. Again, it benefits. I still feel in today's market there's scope for a serious disaster film. They do it with big star lineup, big direction, that poses the question, how does the human race survive? Maybe when worlds collide, maybe that's the one. Okay. I've given it away. Number 3, sorry, it's 2012. This is Roland Emmerich's masterpiece. This film is fucking batshit bonkers. It basically has insane destruction. It has a really fun cast. Like, it doesn't take itself seriously. You got Chiwetel Ejiofor. What's his name? Christ, John Cusack. The destruction on this is mighty, but it's a lot of fun. It kind of, this is one where it knows it's a bit daft and it goes for it. I guess like San Andreas was a bit like that with The Rock. That was serious, but it had some fun bits. Quite, that nearly made me list San Andreas. It's quite a lot of fun. But 2012 grossed $790 million when it came out in 2012. I think it was then. Yeah, now it grossed 1.1 billion. So this was, again, a really big hit for Emmerich. This was, aside from Independence Day, I think his second biggest hit. If you've not seen this film, it's just leave your brain at the door, watch massive amounts of destruction, ridiculous destruction, and watch people have a lot of fun surviving. Okay, those are the first 8 films. The next 2 films, you won't be surprised which films they are, and you're probably questioning, well, which one's going to come first, which one's going to come second. And these 2 films are what I call Boxing Day classics. These are the films that premiere on Boxing Day or Christmas Day, I think Boxing Day, back in the 70s, and they were just top entertainment. They have some of the biggest stars of their day. They have very solid direction by 2 consummate professionals, and they're great entertainment. And they're by the master producer Irwin Allen. So that gives it away. So the question is the Towering Inferno #1, or is it the Poseidon Adventure? Okay, so I thought about this for a while, but I decided at number 2, I'm going for the Towering Inferno. So Towering Inferno, directed by John Gilliman, who did the remake of King Kong, and also Death on the Nile. Why didn't he do a Bond film? He would have been pretty good. This grossed $203 million back in the day, so it'd be 1.2 billion now. With the star caliber of McQueen and Newman, I mean, you've got to think about, you know, the wider market now. This would be a really big hit. You can't, let's put it in a context. If I did the Towering Inferno now, I'm going to cast Leonardo DiCaprio as the architect and frickin' Brad Pitt as the fireman. Or I'm going to have George Clooney as the architect and I don't know, fucking Tom Hanks. It's hard to find big stars now, isn't it? You know, it's that thing where Newman and McQueen were fucking giant-normous, basically. Newman was just coming off the back of The Sting, which was the biggest box office hit of its year, 73, I think. McQueen was coming off a run of hits, Papillon, The Getaway. Papillon was the year before. To agree the billing on this, Newman's name went first, but it went down on the title and McQueen's was up like that. And you still see that billing now. So if you see that billing where someone's name is second but higher, that is the Towering Inferno, Newman, McQueen billing. I think Steve McQueen checked that he got as many lines as Paul Newman. Oddly enough, this feels more like Paul Newman's in it more. A person I feel he has more to do, even though Steve McQueen's fighting the fire. I always preferred Paul Newman's story arc, because he's kind of in the mix, he's architect, so he feels a bit guilty about the fire regulations and everything, and so on. William Holden's excellent. Apparently Holden wasn't too happy with it. He said, I could have phoned my lines, but I love Holden this. Dunaway's excellent. Faye Dunaway, you know what I mean? It's like, you're going to have to cast Jennifer Lawrence. William Holden part, you're going to cast, I don't know, you know, some fucking Anthony Hopkins, I don't know. This has big stars in it. Robert Wagner, one of the best deaths ever. I ran the 100 metres in 10 straight. Yes, you did, but you can't run fire. he's having an affair. They're always having an affair in these films. It's with Jennifer Jones. Now, Jennifer Jones was an actress. I've never seen her in anything, but she won the Oscar for the Song of Bernadette back in 1943 or something. And so Jennifer Jones, a big star, 40s, 50s. And in the Towering Inferno, you get Fred Astaire, you get Jennifer Jones, you get people who used to be big stars, and they're still known. So, you know, now you might get a Faye Dunaway in a disaster film, or something like that, or a Jane Fonda, or someone who used to be a big star, and they still are, sort of. Jennifer Jones, she dies a screaming death. You know, she falls out. It's really horrible. The best death is Richard Chamberlain. He's being selfish. He's not being a team member. So he, you know, they try and get on this cable car, and he'll jump on it and he'll fall off and die. Yes, don't be selfish if you're in a disaster situation. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. It's a long film, it's epic. I just remember the excitement on Boxing Day night. If it was Boxing Day night, I think it was. If it came out 74, it was about 79, 78 it was probably on. And it was great. So why is the Poseidon Adventure #1? In a lot of ways, the Towering Inferno best sits the Poseidon Adventure. It best sit in star power. It best sit in kind of spectacle. And the reason the Towering Inferno has those bigger in spades is because the Poseidon Adventure was a big hit and showed that they could do that. This film grossed $125 million, $775 million adjusted. They actually did a remake of this, Wolfgang Petersen, which isn't bad. I was maybe thinking of including that. I actually quite like it. You know, Kurt Russell, Richard Dreyfuss, decent cast, Josh Lucas. But, you know, at the end of the day, the Poseidon Adventure original rests on two things, really, three things. The ship turns upside down and it does that brilliantly. It does that great set where it basically inverts their world, and that makes it very difficult for them to escape at. And the heart of it, you have Gene Hackman turning up and giving a fucking awesome performance when he doesn't have to. You know, Gene Hackman, he could have come in and just gone, taken his check and just given a 6, 7 out of 10 and been fine. But no, he absolutely commits to this role, like he does Popeye Doll or like he does in The Conversation. He's absolutely brilliant. Spoiler alert if you've not seen the film, so don't, you know, switch off for a bit. But his self-sacrifice at the end is one of the great scenes. It's, you know, not quite up to the self-sacrifice in the core, but it's still good. He'd still get some statues if he was a real person. Yeah, it's great. Shelley Winters, her self-sacrifice is amazing. She rescues Gene Hackman. Shelley Winters is great. You've got Carol Linley, she's brilliant. Her boyfriend's death is really touching. You know, I relate to that because I play in a band, you know. You imagine yourself in the band, you're like having a good time, and all of a sudden you're upside down, you're fucking blatted. You know, you're hanging off a table. Ah! That's the other bit of people like, you know, that. Why did they, in the Poseidon Adventure, you know, they've got like the cool kind of glass ceiling. Why did they do that, the people who made the boat? They didn't think. Why didn't they make it padded? Yeah? So if it turned upside down, which, you know, there's a chance it could happen, then people would just fall and be fine. No, let's put glass in there. You know, and then it's like, ah! Don't do that, cruise ship designers. Anyway, there's that annoying kid who knows all about a ship. He's actually quite good. You've got Leslie Nielsen playing it straight. And that was the other thing. That's why Leslie Nielsen was cast in Airplane, because of his kind of straight-laced approach. In the Poseidon Adventure as the captain, when he came to Airplane, he used that to brilliant effect. In actual fact, Airplane, you know, you could sort of class that, put that in here really, but it's a comedy. So yeah, love the Poseidon Adventure. So that's my #1 disaster film of all time. I should say, I think the Towering Inferno and Poseidon Adventure are pretty far ahead of the other ones on the list. I would say something like Greenland comes, it's good with his serious tone, and that matches things like Poseidon and Towering Inferno. And things like Deep Impact have the emotion, and something like 2012 has the amazing spectacle. But at the end of the day, Towering Inferno and Poseidon Adventure are like really good 70s films, and are worth sort of looking at it a little bit more seriously. Okay, yeah, just one last thing about the Poseidon Adventure. It's about kind of faith as well. Gene Hackman's preacher, you know, he's a man of faith, and he's banking on, in some way, the other person, there's the other guy going the other way, he's a vicar, isn't he, preacher, but it's like Gene Hackman applies logic. It's almost like his faith is maybe lapsed a bit, I don't know, and he applies logic, you know, it's interesting, so there's an interesting element there. I'll shut up. Right, okay, remember to share and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.